All Wise Transformation here. Wanted to touch base in regards to recovery and what part of recovery is. And as an individual who works and provide treatment for folks who struggle with substance abuse, um, one of the things that I try to really make clear is that substances or addiction to substances specifically, or behavioral addiction such as gambling or online shopping or um, pornographic pornographic materials that you're looking online, to alcohol, to marijuana. All of those are coping mechanisms. When I feel, or making I statements, as I always tell my participants, I know for me, it's easy to fall back on either alcohol or binge watching Netflix for hours, um, or even sometimes all night. Uh, those are all ways of coping, ways of managing stress, ways of unplugging, um, ways of processing, ways of slowing down the process. I think it's important to remember that as human beings, we are always in the pursuit of pleasure. I know I am. Either physical comfort, either financial comfort, or sexual comfort. Um, Eliciting ways to be praised. So, pleasure is literally ingrained in my DNA and in human DNA. So, I'm not particularly special in that way. But what is important to remember when you're dealing with an addiction is that it has become an unhealthy way of managing. And I'm sure folks who have seen other TikTok videos or who have gone into treatment themselves, um, finding other ways of managing stress, finding other ways of managing loneliness, sitting with boredom, those are all part of the human condition. And I'm not saying that it's tolerable. For some people, boredom is not even a thing, um, because they engage in life in a way that puts them in the moment, that they're literally living in the moment. I don't necessarily know if I have that capability to a certain extent. I am able to practice being in the moment, but to sustain being in the moment, I think that is a challenge, and maybe a Buddhist monk could probably do that. But for me, this this particular topic is really about, it's okay to want to self-soothe. that's fine. It's just when it becomes unmanageable, when it becomes bigger than you, and when you find yourself needing a stronger drink, a more intense high, and you find your life starts falling apart, it might be time to step back. It is okay to want to feel comfortable. It's okay to want to feel pleasure. It's okay to want to experience life in a way where you never have to be sad, where you never have to be disappointed, where you never have to be anxious. And it is through wanting to escape from all of those things, or not face it, or not sit with it, being able to tolerate your feelings, again, really difficult for me to do. But the work is finding a rhythm, and I think I've said this in a previous video, which I don't think I've put up yet, where the goal is to find a rhythm to life, to your particular life and to my life. What does that mean? That means the way that you wake up in the morning. That means the amount of energy you have to attend events or gatherings. It means listening to not only your body, but the environment that you're in. And again, it's a very particular skill to be in tune with yourself. I know that I could be more in tune with myself. I think because I go to the gym on a somewhat regular basis, I have a pretty good connection to my body. But I do find that sometimes I want to engage in either obsessive drinking, or binge watching various shows to the point where I am so detached from the moment that time just sort of flies by. And maybe that's part of the point of addiction, is to be so numb and disconnected that you no longer are aware of how time is moving, from the time you wake up, if you have a drink, compared to your evening routine, if you have a joint, or if you engage in pursuit of sexual conquests, whatever that is, or sexual novelty, whatever that is for you. It is about managing your emotions. And addiction, substances and behavior addiction, are just bad coping mechanisms. Some people go to the gym. Some people light up a joint. Some people jump out of airplanes. And some people have a six-pack. And it's a very, and I want to be very specific here in the sense of, for me, an addiction is anything that is to a point where it disturbs you emotionally, it interferes with your life, and you are financially taking a hit because of the need to maintain that substance or that behavioral addiction, whatever it is. For example, gambling, right? So gambling to me is probably one of the most hardest addictions that anyone could have. And not saying that other addictions don't ruin your life, because they certainly do, but financially, it can ruin you for a very long time. And again, right, like we can argue that cocaine and crack and alcohol can do that. Just like alcohol, where it's sort of socially accepted, there are scratch-off tickets. There are online games that you could play for change or for money. These apps that you pay to use these games. And so your finances could go pretty quickly. And like most addictions, you get a high off of it. No, pun not intended. There is this boost of adrenaline that happens, endorphins that kicks in, that says, I am being rewarded for this behavior. And the same thing could be said with alcohol when you're drinking in a social environment, if you're a social drinker. Because everyone is doing it. And so it provides an avenue to feel normal, connected. With gambling, it gives you the false hope of winning it big. And I don't think we talk about gambling enough. I don't think we talk about addiction in a very healthy way, where I think most people think of addiction as a crackhead who is in a crack house living in the ghetto. But addiction is everywhere because, one, life is really difficult, and for some of us, life is outright horrible. And so we have to have ways of managing that. And sometimes that gets out of hand and your life starts falling apart. Now, you could choose, I know I have chosen to step back from alcohol because I notice how I could finish a whole bottle of wine by myself. And I'm sure lots of people could finish a whole bottle of wine by themselves. And another bottle of wine, and possibly 3 bottles of wine. So the goal for me isn't necessarily to unplug. The goal is to settle in my body, to relax, to unplug, to feel a sense of peace, to feel a sense of happiness. Because it is when you're in those anxious, those flashbacks of trauma, it is those moments that your thoughts feel as if they are unmanageable. And to some degree, it is horrible. And if you're not ready to face it, you're not ready to face it. And I encourage you to find help, whatever that looks like, religious, spiritual, a life coach, a therapist, a Yoruba priest or priestess, a Wiccan priest or priestess, going to AA meetings, whatever it is, it's to acknowledge that life is really, really difficult. And I think that is a unspoken rule that a lot of people can agree that life is difficult. So Johann Hare from the book Chasing the Scream would say the opposite of addiction would be connection. And so working on cultivating relationships with people that value you, with people that support you, with people that accepts you. And I think moving in a way where it flows. I keep coming back to this flow, and I'm still learning about what the flow is. The flow is the rhythm of the day, the heat of the day, the coolness of the day, the way that I slept, what I ate, what I didn't eat, what I'm craving. There is a rhythm, and I'm not saying that it's easy to be in sync with that rhythm, but if you're dealing with an addiction, it's part of the practice to find what works for you. And I encourage everybody to identify that pleasure is abundant. It is pleasurable to doom scroll on my cell phone. It is pleasurable to eat good food to the point where I feel like I'm going to burst. And our culture wants us to give in to our need to be satiated. Our culture wants us to buy and buy and buy and buy. Just buy a lot of things. Does it fill you up? Probably not. I know for me, things that I've bought, I thought I was going to like. And sometimes they just sit in my shelf, or I put them in a drawer and never think about them again. And so I accumulate a lot of stuff. And living in a studio apartment, I have to be very mindful of how much I accumulate, because it's a pretty small space. So, pleasure is literally inwoven into our DNA. Pain is something that we all want to run away from. either conflict with a loved one or an employee or a supervisee or supervisor. And so I have to engage in a way where I'm very well aware that I can get lost very quickly. And so some people have better self-control, and I hesitate to use self-control because self-control is important, and we all need to practice that. But self-control in a way where it is in rhythm and in sync with the way that you want and are practicing to live. Easier said than done. So, addiction isn't simple. It's a brain chemical thing, and it's also a social thing. I tend to lean more on the social aspect of addiction, even though I do believe there is a biological, chemical dependency that happens in the body for a certain drug or behavior. And addiction sort of just puts you out of sync with everything. It puts you out of sync with your body. It gives you the false belief that you are in relationship with other people because it's the substance that has the relationship with the other person. You just happen to be the passenger when the substance is in your body, or you happen to be the passenger when you are playing blackjack because you really think you're going to win. And so the thought and the perception are two different things. I could think I could manage, and then the experience says otherwise. Overall, human beings are complicated. And I've been trying to create videos that talk about normalcy. And again, that's a very loaded word, and I know it's a very loaded word because there is no normal. To a certain degree, we're all awkward and neurodivergent. So I try to give myself grace when I find myself wanting to go for unplugging behavior, whatever that is, binge watching or drinking a whole bottle of wine by myself. It is through the work of compassion that the rhythm of life seems to become clearer, and centering yourself in a way, or centering myself in a way that makes me appreciate what I have, what I've accomplished, what I would like to accomplish, So, with that said, thanks for watching.